the start of the pandemic, it was, for most of our competitors, it was business went down the pan. For us, business went that way.
We knew that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve here.
We have to be agile all the time. Things change continuously in our business. Because if you jump in, often it leads to something positive.
And he said, the definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off a cliff and then invents a flying machine on his way down. It doesn't always feel like fun. It doesn't always feel that comfortable. At those moments, that's when you know whether you're meant to be there or whether you should be doing something else.
Welcome to this podcast brought to you by MPA and EFN.
I'm Talitha Heaton.
And I'm Ronnie Munster.
In this series, we help business owners up and down the country navigate the sometimes perilous waters of starting their own business.
Each week, we talk to business people, learn of their successes and failures and their experiences, and most importantly, gain their shared insights into what it is to run and grow a company in challenging times.
Well, good morning, and I'd like to welcome Ben Shoshan and Marika Cysouw. And I think everybody will notice that we're not in our usual studio. We're in the studio of Marika and Ben's, which is a different setup, but a professional setup.
So when you said we're in the studio of Ben and Marika, that's already an unusual introduction, because normally you'd say we're in the studios of Open Water Development Limited, because these are our official professional studios, and our company is called Open Water Development Limited. And we're a people and change consultancy, and we work with the mindset that drives behaviour. We grow leaders and we help organisations and teams build the culture that they want to build in order to be fit for purpose for what they're actually trying to achieve.
Yeah, in short, the people side of change is what we do.
Right. And you founded this business quite some time ago, 2006, if I remember correctly.
2008.
2008.
Yeah, we started.
Is your background for both of you in that kind of people, leadership, culture change, or did you come upon this by accident? What drove you to this?
Yeah, in different ways, there's a little bit of a yes answer to that. Probably more so in my case, because I was previously working in an organisation that was very much in coaching people and people behaviour development, using a lot of sort of new psychology and modern methods of coaching, neuro-linguistic programming, all this sort of new science that was coming in around how you could develop people. And that's where I was learning my material. At the same time, Marika was also, well, at the time you were actually working, I think at the Dutch embassy, I think probably.
Yeah. So my background is completely different, but I quite like change.
Right.
So I did about 10 years or 15 years of film and TV. Then I changed careers. You have children, things change. So then I became an agricultural advisor for the Dutch government here in London. I did that for about 7 years, and then it was time for a change. And of course, I was very immersed in what Ben did always, and very interested in it. And I thought, okay, let's set up a business and let's learn as much as possible. So I started doing lots of, different courses relating to this, to people development, basically.
Right.
And then slowly we made the change and starting to work together.
And the business has obviously been going a while. It's successful and so on. Why are we in a studio? What do you use the studio for? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah.
Well, I guess our business was always, we go to our clients and we do workshops, conferences, lots of different things. So our guys and girls were traveling all over the world all the time. And that was a particular business model that worked well. And then the pandemic came. Before the pandemic, we were already thinking of creating a studio where we can do the kind of work that we do with our clients, normally face-to-face, and do it virtually. So how do we do that? Because we'll explain a little bit later that the way we work with our clients is very experiential, it's very immersive. So it's important that you can do that virtually as well. So a Zoom call doesn't really, or a Teams call, doesn't really, work. So the start of the pandemic, it was business went down the pan. For us, business went that way. And why is that? Because we decided immediately, let's bring our resources here, bring one of our guys who's I guess, he's a specialist, a producer in setting up these kind of settings. He moved in with us because he wasn't allowed to travel for a little while. And we created this studio here so that we could start doing the work that we did before, exactly the same, and business as usual. Business continued as usual.
I think that's quite incredible and quite unusual actually for a business to become even more successful during COVID and be able to actually continue with the work that they're doing.
Yeah.
What was the impact that you saw on some of your clients and the teams and the way people were feeling going into the pandemic and then kind of getting through that?
Yeah, there's a lot to that. That's a big question. People were being pretty, as we all know, we are significantly impacted by the pandemic. And the fact that they could actually get a certain level of comfort, development, all of those things that was normal before, that you could get that via this kind of medium. So if, for example, one of the things we do is leadership alignment. So it's like bringing a group of leaders together and we take them through exercises and processes that make them start to build trust with each other. To do that suddenly and be able to do it in a remote setting when all of them are sitting at home in their bedrooms, in their living rooms with their kids and their dogs and everything else happening at the same time, and still be able to connect with so-and-so in New York and so-and-so in San Francisco and somebody else in Spain and Madrid as a team, that was quite a wow factor as well for them. And it really set us up, didn't it? Because it meant that suddenly in our bigger clients, we were already developing a reputation for being able to get stuff done that others couldn't.
Yeah. And the clients, the companies themselves could really offer something to their people as well. So rather than just here we are again on a call, and all the stress that was happening in the world and in their environment, the company could say here is something special, something nice. It's for you. We're investing in you. We're investing in you.
Yeah.
Which was of course very difficult at that time. And I think that helped a lot of our clients as well.
Yeah, the fact that they were getting support and they were getting help during a time when everybody was freaking out a little bit. Yeah.
When the pandemic first started, I mean, nobody really quite understood what was going on.
No.
Did you have your own moment of panic and think, oh my goodness, the world's going to fall in? Or did you see it there and then, this is the opportunity we've been waiting for?
I'm going to talk first briefly about one small moment of panic.
Yes.
Because I said most of our people travel a lot, and Ben is one of them. And he was in America. And countries were closing down, and America was about to close down. And we were trying to get him out of America. And all the flights were cancelled, and so our people were trying to bring them back.
Yeah, so there's a nice little precursor to that, because also it's kind of another. There were so many defining moments, milestone moments that were happening. And by the way, talking of moments of panic, there's probably a whole couple of dozen of those we can talk about before the pandemic as well, in terms of this business, and. Watching one of your podcasts yesterday with Devi, yeah, and I love the way that she was sort of saying, if you're going to run your own business, don't think that you're going to be able to succeed just by having a good plan. Yeah. Nothing is planned, nothing is expected, and you've got to have that sort of grit, resilience, and sheer bloody mindedness to actually power through.
I think there's one thing that we do very well, if I may say that ourselves, is that. Something happens and we react to it. So we try and be as innovative as we can be, and we have to be agile all the time. things change continuously in our business, and we want to make sure that we do for the clients what they ask us, but also that we, you know, manage it in the best possible way here. And setting up a studio is, you know, it was a big investment, time investment. We didn't know if it was going to work, but you have to do something and you have to make that decision. And I think that's where we work very well together, where we just, you know, we're both happy to try things out. And that's exciting. That's exciting, yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you call it fun. I think some people, maybe people who wouldn't start a business, would see the risk or the challenges and things like that.
Oh no, I think that's definitely a factor, and I think and I think we've had a lot of feedback around that, and I think that's why I refer to Devi again, because I think she gets it as well. It's that sort of thing. Unless you're prepared to actually, one of our daughters said she was. They were at school, and one of the parents, who's a very, very successful entrepreneur, gave them a keynote speech, you know, as they do in the schools. And he said, you know, the definition of an entrepreneur is somebody who jumps off a cliff and then invents a flying machine on his way down, which I thought was a lovely metaphor. And it basically means that you don't know what to expect. To Devi's point, you're constantly bombarded with things, and if you can manage to sort of plow through, it doesn't always feel like fun. It doesn't always feel that comfortable. You are, you know, half the time thinking, will we be able to get out of this particular crisis? But gradually, I mean, you know, in this case, this was a very significant turning point. It didn't mean it was easy. It didn't mean that we didn't have to learn, and we're still learning. We're learning every single day. That's part of our core principles over here.
And if we look back over the, you know, last how many years, I think we look at the positives. There's a few moments where we, you know, as Ben said earlier, where, you know, critical moments in the business where you think, is it going to work? Are we going to be able to do it? And how are we going to do it? Which, but most of the time, you know, looking back, it has been a lot of fun, and we have enjoyed it a lot. And there is each moment like this, you know, we feel happy and proud of what we've managed to do, because if you jump in, often it leads to something positive.
Yeah,
I think.
Well, I mean, I would say we mustn't sound too sort of, you know, smug and complacent, because, or even arrogant, because circumstance you can't control, and you know, certain circumstances, and we were in situations where we may not have necessarily prevailed, but we have this model that I'm sure lots of people know about, which we call E plus R equals O. There's an event, there's your response, and it's the event plus the response that equals the outcome. And very often, if you respond in an appropriate way, as long as you're thinking about the outcome you're trying to achieve, and you try and minimize the panic factor, there could be an opportunity there. And this was one of those moments. This is definitely a case where we responded in a way that actually managed to work out for us, you know, fortunately. Yeah.
Do you think that gets easier over time in coming to one of those points where you have to pivot, or you're facing a particular challenge? Because I'm sure a lot of business owners out there, you know, just fall into that panic, and it can be very hard to kind of see the wood for the trees and know what decision to make.
I think it's definitely a muscle that you can build and practice on. Definitely, that's why it's one of those models that we absolutely, you know, provide our clients with.
There's another thing. I think we're a partnership, so we're very complementary. I think we have a similar focus. So being able to discuss it with somebody, it's much easier. If I were doing it all on my own, I think I'd found it a lot harder. And these critical decisions of, okay, we're going to spend this much on that because otherwise, you know, whatever. Doing that together is so much easier. So yeah, I've never run a business on my own, and I wouldn't know.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that, because co-founders, you've got that shared vision normally. It doesn't always continue in that direction, but by starting with that, and obviously hopefully having the same objective in mind, it means that when you are facing these crises, you've got someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that I've seen through my clients and my colleagues' clients is that where it's a single owner, it's much harder. They've got no one to talk to.
Yeah.
You know, they might be able to talk to their spouse or fellow directors, but it's not the same. So you've got that ability to, to discuss and share. You may not agree, but at least there's somebody of equal standing, if you like.
Yeah, well, I'd say that there's, with everything, there's the light and the shade of those things. So many people ask us, how do you do it? How do you manage to sort of, stay and be in each other's space for as long as that, as we do on a daily basis, and still be able to, so it's not necessarily the easiest thing in the world. And I think that the foundation of the relationship is critical here, because you have to know that no matter what happens, no matter what sort of agreements or disagreements you have, no matter, and by the way, that thing about the shared vision and the shared goal, that's not also necessarily that true or that clear either. Because if you think about where we are today compared to where we started, our goals have shifted, our perspective has shifted, our desired outcomes have shifted as well. So you have to bring each other along on that journey.
Yeah.
But underneath it all, there has to be a real solid foundation of trust. And that, I think that's, that both of us know that ultimately, whatever happens, we know that we're both on the same path, going for the same outcome.
Right.
So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily always that easy and that obvious.
Yeah, the implication...
But it definitely helps.
Yeah.
If you have got that, to have a sounding board for each other,
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons the service we provide is we often help business owners who are in the position of being a sole owner.
Yeah.
And then they come and talk to me or one of our colleagues so that they can share their burdens, because they've got no one to do it with. So I wasn't suggesting it was easy, but it just does facilitate it.
Definitely. For us, it definitely has worked, and it wouldn't have been that easy for either of us, I think, to have done it alone, done it solo.
Yeah, and it it gets, the longer you work together, the more you find your own space as well in the organization, because when you first start out, it's even more intense, I suppose. But the bigger you grow, the more you do your own thing with the same goal and the same outcome. So as long as we have our plans and our business plan and our growth plans all aligned, then that's something to hold on to. No?
How do you work through it if you do have different opinions, or one of you thinks the business should do something and then the other one doesn't necessarily agree? Because that's something that's going to be really common amongst co-founders in particular.
I do what I'm told. Yeah. No, is that true?
Maybe.
Yeah, I think it is the case that we probably find that we occupy certain areas where one or other of us tends to be. So, and by the way, this wasn't necessarily always this clear cut, because both of us are doing everything. So both of you own the business and both of us have to contribute at every piece. But we've sort of naturally fallen into, I'm more the content and the client, if you like, owner. Marika is finance, she's people, and she's been operations, even though she's sort of moving a little bit away from operations now. But so there's probably areas where Marika probably has the final word, and there's areas where I will have the final word. And I think we probably do that quite naturally now.
I think it feels very comfortable and easy.
Yeah.
I don't. Sometimes you have slight. Yes, I think we should do that, but we don't really have arguments about it, and we don't really have.
Yeah.
And if you do, we're very aligned.
Quite short, because we get through it very quickly, and somehow we get each other. We get it. I think so.
Yeah. I think one of the interesting things in your case, as well as living together, working together, having a family, how have you built the business, and have you had to put in place particular boundaries where you're prioritizing one area of your life at a certain point, or because life moves on and you go through different things with business? It's
a really big question, or not big question, but it's an important question, because it's if you want to run a business and you have a family, you have to find a way of doing that so that it doesn't impact the family too much. And what we decided was that instead of separating it, we're actually bringing it almost more together. So we've always had offices very close or near or in our living space. So that is unusual, I suppose. But that means that you're always there when the kids arrive home. You're there as well, so you can separate it that way. And you have to make some, not rules, but you have to just say, okay, now it's family time and not business time. So trying to find that division, it's sometimes difficult because, you know, if there's a lot going on, you want to discuss it, and you need to discuss it, but you don't want to do it when the children are there, because otherwise it's too much for them. So yeah,
We've had lots of feedback from
at
the
dinner,
kids, you know, and it's a learning journey.
At dinner, you know, you try not to do that. You try and keep that separate, and I think it's what, you know.
But I think it's important to say, though, also, it's, again, I mean, it sounds as if we've got it all worked out, it's been nicely planned. None of this is planned. All of this is worked out, you know, and you learn it along the journey, and you realise, hang on a minute, work has crept so much into our daily life that we've not even, you know, even I sometimes would say, I want to get out of the house because I've been at work all day long and I just want to shift and a change in state. And as I say, and also the kids have been very good, because they've lived with it, they've accepted it, but they've also given us feedback and told us when enough is enough. Now we draw a line, kind of thing. So gradually we've sort of learned how to sort of, you know, adapt to that. Yeah, and I think we're going through another stage of change now also. Yeah. Where, so now we need more studios, because we've got, you know, the level of work has grown to the extent that it has, that we need to be able to expand as well. And so again, that's another set of decisions where we create more of a remote space rather than a space that is also incorporated in our sort of, you know, living environment. Yeah.
I wanted to go back to something you said earlier on, prior to the pandemic. It seems so long ago prior to the pandemic, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
It's like talking about BC and AD, you know. But you mentioned that since you started the company, there's been a number of crises along the way. Would you say that because you've had, as every business person does, they have incidents and crises and they have to manage them, that when the next one comes along, that your automatic mode of thinking is, I've dealt with this one in the past, or I've dealt with these ones in the past, therefore I need to stop and think about it, but we'll deal with it. Has it made you more resilient and more comfortable with the fact it's just something, it's a hurdle to get over rather than a barrier that stops you?
You know, when you talk about crisis, there's lots of different things, of course, that need your immediate attention. I definitely don't have the sleepless nights or things like that I might have had right at the beginning when we didn't know how to deal with certain things as yet. Whereas now, absolutely, we have a lot of people around us. We have a great team. We have advisors that we can go to. So it's become easier.
Which is very different when you don't know whether you're going to be able to pay the mortgage next month, whether you're going to be able to pay your people next month, whether you don't have any more credit at the bank and nobody's going to give you any more loans. Those sorts of situations suddenly,
They focus the mind.
They focus the mind for sure, but they also have a real demand on your ability and your resilience. Again, I keep thinking of Debbie, obviously, because it's very recent in my mind, but, you know, she was referring to those similar sorts of things, right? That, you know, at those moments, that's when you know whether you're meant to be there or whether you should be doing something else.
That's when
and it's not for everybody.
That's when you're building the plane. You know?
That's when you're
jumping off the cliff, you're building the plane. That's what we're doing all the time.
Exactly. I'm going to remember that quote for a long time.
Yeah.
The jumping off the cliff.
Great. Yeah, please use it. That's free. No, we won't charge you for that.
No, that's good.
So what actually stopped you from deciding, actually, I just don't want to do this anymore, at those really difficult points where, you know, you're looking at your bills and how you're going to pay things? And
it's probably the other one, wasn't it? That was probably one of those moments. It will have been the other one, whether it was Marika helping me refocus my mind or me helping Marika refocus hers, because both of us have been at times and at moments where both of us have felt.
Yeah, and that's why the partnership is so useful. You know, you don't, if you're both completely at the low point or you can't see anything out, then that's a bit more difficult. And then you need to get some support somewhere else. But
Yeah, and that's another nice thing also, again, I keep referring back to, remember what it is that we do. So both Marika and I have been trained as coaches. So both of us have gone through that whole process. So there are times when we have to sort of bring the coaching toolbox out, as it were.
yeah, the question,
To
what
help
could be
you.
good about this?
Yeah.
You know, it's one of those questions that can be very annoying, but can also
Yeah.
be very helpful.
in the moment.
But in the moment, sometimes you have
Yeah.
to just look, okay, so there was one moment that we both probably remember where we said, okay, we're going to try it for a little bit longer, and if not, then, you know, we're going to try and do something different.
Yeah, I think we gave it about 6 months then, didn't we, when
yeah.
we said that if we don't make it by then, that's it, we're out of here.
So that was, we said, that's the decision we're going to make now. And then three months later, so within a very short period of time, we got a big project. And we've forgotten all about it.
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's it's life in a business, isn't it? It goes up and down.
It must be useful to have those skills to draw on working in the space you do. Because one of the questions I was going to ask was, do
Yeah.
you practice what you preach in
Which
kind of bringing that into your own business? Because a lot of business owners, for example, if there's a marketing agency, they'll be brilliant at everything they do for clients, but
Not
they
for
are
them.
bottom of the list and kind of the last that gets a look in it.
Yeah.
No, it's fair enough, yeah. And try and do it to your kids, and there you go. It's just, don't do any of that coaching
Yeah.
crap on me.
But,
Yeah, they've been with it. However, of course, you know, now that's the sort of the tongue-in-cheek part, and that part. What that does is that reminds us, like Marika just said, with that, you know, with that annoying question of what could be good about this kind of thing. It reminds us that you have to be very, very present, very immersed, and you have to be very, you know, naturally with good intentions to do what it is that you do. And a lot of the strategies that have taught us and helped us, and probably our kids too, you know, if you were interviewing them, I'm sure they'd say, yeah, we probably did get some useful tips here and there from the family. So I'm sure it's helped.
yeah, but it's also, you know, we do culture transformation, and culture is for us extremely important in our team, in our business.
Yeah.
So we actually make a real effort to walk our talk, talk our walk, walk our talk. Yeah.
Yes. Walk the walk.
Yeah, just,
Walk the walk.
Just talk on.
Talk-
I
yeah.
like that.
One of the things
Yeah.
one of the things I find, I've got adult children now, but one of the things I found very useful is that, because they don't, I don't know about yours, but mine didn't come with a manual.
No, I lost that one.
Talitha's a young parent, so she's still
Oh,
looking
right.
for the manual. But
Yes, I'll find it.
but is that a lot, you know, because of how you grow up and you work and you go on this treadmill, you think you know how to handle people, you know, and then along come teenagers, because it's
Yeah.
only once they're teenagers, and you suddenly realise you haven't a clue and you don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But I personally have found that's actually helped me, particularly with one of my two, because I know he won't be listening. But he thinks very differently.
Yeah.
And that's been useful because you suddenly realise, well, yes, not everybody thinks like me or my
Yeah.
wife or my friends, but
Yeah.
he thinks differently. And I've actually found that useful when dealing with people generally.
Yeah.
You know, there are different ways of thinking.
Yeah. Well,
And that's probably the same for you as well.
That's very interesting, though.
yeah, I'm sure we've learned
Definitely.
a lot ourselves, and I mean, I was thinking back to when we started Open Water. I was quite interested also in coaching children. So the coaching philosophy of education, and it's different than what we normally do in education. So not because I want to become a teacher, because I wanted to understand the philosophy, I became a Montessori
Yes,
teacher,
okay, yeah.
which is a very coaching philosophy.
Right, yeah.
So, and that is what we do in our work as well. And that has helped a little bit by understanding your kids a bit better. Not that we're doing it, nobody does it perfectly, because as you said, everybody does it for the first time.
Yeah.
And every child is so different. And you
Aren't
do
they
it.
just, yes.
And it's so complicated sometimes to do and say the right thing. You can only draw on experience around you, what you've learned yourself, and then try, as you did, you know, understand and learn from that person that is in your life, and that you have to look after.
I'd definitely say that it's probably, I've said it so many times, you know, it's the biggest lesson of all the lessons that, you know, and the biggest journey, and, you know, enjoy, good luck.
It's very exciting.
But I definitely helped in the, you know, in being a good coach for clients and so, etc. as well, just because you learn so much from that experience of, as you say, very different perspectives. And being mindful and being compassionate and being sort of, you know, empathic and caring enough to be able to try and see the world through the eyes of the other person is definitely one of the core elements of being a good coach. But I think we're learning all our lives, I think.
Yeah.
Well, us slow learners are anyway. But when I say us, I mean me, obviously, not you. No. Thankfully, I have her. So, yeah, she's my coach.
Are there any qualities that you think really stand out in some, you know, either the best leaders that you've met or the people who have really done well with your coaching and really taken things on board?
Oh, it's a nice question.
There are so many elements because a person is a rounded entity, I suppose, of lots of different ways of behaving and skills and mindsets. I think building trust, creating trust, being trusting and trusted is very important, and also empathy is very, very important. Standing in the shoes of somebody else and actually understanding your team, your team member, your colleagues, so that you can respond in the right way.
You know, the whole emotional intelligence thing is, you know, and that's where sort of a lot of the foundation of what we do comes from. So Goleman, Boyatzis and McClellan's work around emotional intelligence and how do you measure that and how do you see it manifest itself in leadership is absolutely core to it. And most of the work that we do is in helping leaders try and align the organization. So usually the problems and the issues are of lack of trust, lack of clarity, lack of cohesion amongst the people in the groups, and that's kind of what we're helping our clients with. But yeah, those are, and it's not usually that people necessarily lack those, let's say, the intelligence or the intentions, but they just may not be communicating it, delivering it, or projecting it in the way that is necessary to build trust, because circumstance is happening. And today, circumstance is far more volatile, far more, I'm sure that you've had and talked about VUCA in your podcasts before, but the whole volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous environment that everybody works in today is just, it's like it's exponentially shifted from where it was pre-pandemic. And the pandemic has a lot to do with that, not because of COVID and vaccines, but because of digital, because of AI, because of the way that markets have suddenly shifted, the fact that people are remote working and all that sort of stuff has just massively impacted the way people work and cohabit and coexist.
Yeah, and I think there's one more thing that we see a lot is that in teams specifically, people work together, they live in all different places, they work remotely, even if they're in the office together, they don't actually know each other. They don't even know where they live. They don't even know if they're married or not. They don't know anything about themselves, about each other, sorry. And just creating that space for, in a very short period of time, we can create some connection between people just because the human side comes out, and that's where our human, you know, the human side of change comes in.
Absolutely, and that just back to Talitha's question then again, so what is expected of a leader today is very different to what it was. And in order to be able to deliver that, if you like, that sort of level of trust and cohesion today, it's a very different demand than it used to be.
You need to show vulnerability, which, you know, 20 years ago, don't show any vulnerability because, you know, you'll lose your job. But now it's important because that is where you create connection and I suppose a real, people connection.
Very conscious of your time, and thank you very much for joining us on this podcast. We have developed this little tradition where we ask a question of our last guest to ask the next guest.
Oh, wow.
So Mike, our last guest, whose podcast will go out soon, asked what we thought was a rather good question. So we're going to ask you, and then after that, perhaps you can share your question for the next guest. So if you were mentoring a new business owner, how would you get them to look outside the box, if you like, rather than inside the box in which they're working?
Wow, yeah, big question. If we were mentoring a new client,
A new business owner.
owner.
It's a new business owner, so
New
not a new
business
client,
owner.
but somebody
new
external.
business owner, right? How would you get them?
Well, no, I don't have an immediate answer. So I'll have to think
You
about
sounded as if you had an idea there.
No, I was going, yes.
Yes, yeah, thank you. How would
Yeah.
you get them to look to look outside the box? Just so my first thought is that, and what we would probably be doing this naturally if that person was, one of our, collaborators or contacts, is looking outside the box. One of my colleagues has this phrase: the best way to look outside the box is get into somebody else's. In other words, see the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
And the best way to do that is to ask them for honest feedback. And you have to do that in a way that makes them feel comfortable enough to be able to share that with you. And doing that, by opening yourselves up, by sort of, admitting already to the fact that you're not perfect, you haven't got it all sorted out, that this, and if they're a new business owner, they have to talk to their prospective customers and they have to ask them what is not the good, not the ideal outcome, but ask them also what is absolutely not working and what's the most likely hurdle that we will fall over. So maybe that would be.
That's a great response, though. That's
Okay.
really good. Yeah. Yeah. It's like,
Good.
I would,
I like that.
I would add one thing, I suppose, is change your environment. Go somewhere that's completely different and be inspired. Whether it's a lecture or anything that you can, any other environment, business meeting, a business breakfast, whatever. Speak to other people and try and get that input. And if you have already a team or a small team or anything, talk to your team and do some brainstorming together and be as open as possible, because as you always say, is like with every pair of hands you have a free brain. Everybody has something to say. Don't think you all have to do it all yourself.
Yeah.
That sometimes you get to it's my vision, but everybody has so much input to give.
Yeah. So your task now is to think of a question for our next guest.
Okay.
Yeah. So we haven't. Have I answered that question?
You've answered the question.
I have. Good. Okay.
Yes. You've both answered.
Your turn.
What a question for
our next guest.
For our
Yes.
next guest.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you're asking them questions like, what's a good solution for you to focus on in order to achieve your plan? What are some ideas? Maybe who could you talk to? Those sorts of things are all a little bit obvious. Then asking them something like, what would be the most courageous thing to do or the most courageous step to take? But you're talking to people who are already the established business owners, right?
Our next guest is going through a significant period of change. And we'll be talking to him about that. So, in a sense, it's probably most appropriate is that question, is what is the most courageous thing you can do? Because I sense that courage is what's driving him to, fingers crossed, touch wood and all that, make that change. So I think in a way that's a good question.
Good.
Well, thank you both again. Thanks for the use of your studio. which we've enjoyed using. Thanks for being excellent guests as well.
Well, it's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure to talk to you guys.
Yeah,
Thank
it
you.
has been. Thanks for giving us the opportunity. This is an unusual space for us to be
It
in.
is, yeah.
So
You seem
thank
quite
you.
comfortable. So.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.